Hey, good evening. Welcome to the studio. And today we're going to take a look at the Abbey Road TG Mastering Live and the Abbey Road TG Meter Bridge, too, which are really important. And what I like about the meter bridge is you got a nice phase meter, and we're going to dive into this a little bit, but not too much. I'm going to show you how I like using it, particularly when it comes to first delivery of mixes. And so a lot can be said about mastering, and this is not a comprehensive mastering overview how to master a song. This is more about you've completed a song, you want to send it to a client, but you want to put an extra little polish on that finish, that version. So from a complete sort of disclosure point of view, when I'm sending cues to be previewed, especially as they relate for my film work, I'll often like to make sure that the mix that I'm sending is the best possible sounding mix that I can. So early in my career, I would do some basic metering and just send the mock-up out, and I wouldn't spend that much time with mastering plugins. And so now I do a lot more with those, particularly as it sort of relates to the draft version of a project. And the reason why it's important, you want your work to sound as polished as it can be, even though it's not finished. So you're always going to be judged by what they hear, whether it's version 1 or version 20. The quality of what you're delivering should always be pretty high. And so in an attempt to redress issues with loudness, issues with sort of final polish, this is a really great plugin for that. And I'm going to take you through my typical workflow as it relates to this. So here we go. So the mix we have, and I'll bring these out of the window, we're just going to listen to the track. I'm going to bypass all of those things. And what you're going to be hearing is just the unmastered version of this. So this was, a session I finished up, and I haven't mastered it yet. I don't even know if I'm going to master it yet. I haven't sent it to a client yet, but I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to see, I'm going to hear how it sounds, and what can happen when you add this particular mastering suite as a polishing agent, as I like to call it, to your rough mixes or your final mixes. So here we go. No mastering plugin. So that's a good place to stop. So it's a very ambient track. It's a soundtrack track for film and TV. And I've got the Youlean Loudness Meter up. And what I've selected as the LUFS output level, the LUFS output level, is Spotify loud. Now, the reason I'm doing that is lack of presence can really put the kibosh on your opportunity to impress a particular client. And what I mean by that, if it's not loud enough and they have to turn things up and it doesn't have that sort of initial impact, that can actually affect your prospects as a composer. And so I'm going to now apply the Abbey Road stuff. And we're not going to listen to the whole track again. We'll just listen to it from here. And you're going to notice a huge change in the overall LUFS level. So the average LUFS level right now is, let's see, it is negative 21, which is actually good for, if we turn this over to Netflix, it's actually good for a Netflix mix. Actually, it goes louder than that. So let's just play that again. And this is why I love the Youlean plugin, is it allows me to sort of gauge loudness references, particularly when I'm doing stuff for either solo release, or I'm doing a Dolby Atmos mix, or I'm sending things directly to clients, and they're picky about output levels, even though that's something the re-recording, remixing engineer often does on their end. But let's backtrack and let's talk specifically about the quality of the work that we're going to be showing a client, or having a client listen to in this case. So I'm going to set this back to Spotify loud, which puts the LUFS back to negative 11. And now I'm going to show you how I use this particular plugin. So there's two. There's the meter bridge here, and I use the phase meter on this because I really like it. And I use that in conjunction with this average level of loudness meter, which Youlean makes, which is really great. Isotope has something like this as well. There are a couple of other manufacturers that make things like this, plug-in manufacturers. But for the purpose of this demonstration, we're going to focus on the mastering plugin. Now, why this particular one? This one has a lot of character to it, and it's an emulation of what's used in Abbey Road. It's the mastering desk that they use, and this is a software emulation of that. And I just love the way that this sounds, not for every type of, music, not for every kind of music, not for every kind of musical track. Like I would never use this on a contemporary dance track or something. But for film music, I love using this because it adds a little bit of umami gooiness to the whole, just overall affect of what you're doing. And so here it is without. And I'm going to pause the video for just a second. And I'm going to plug in my lovely controller. So just hang on. Keeping it real, folks. Keeping it real. We're getting all those nice blinky lights in a minute. There we go. I'm going to use the Arturia for this. And let's go. Here we go. Okay, great. So here we go. Few of the presets, we're going to listen to them. You'll notice they have a really dramatic impact on the overall sound. So we'll listen to a few seconds of this minus the preset. Okay, so now we're going to put it in. And we're going to do some sweeping through these. without. And just there, you can hear the real difference in the overall impact of the track. It's in and out. And there's great ways that you can open up these different sections and hear individual frequency bands, particularly on the mid side. Very dramatic. Differences in tonality. Out, duller sounding. In, so much fuller. So this is a really great plugin if you want to create an extra little bit of polish on your mix before you send it out, even if it's not a final version. Like pre-mastering is what I like to call it. So it's not a final master, but it's a good pre-master. And if we listen to it from the very beginning, it's very dramatic in terms of what it can add. Let's see how it affects the LUFS. So we're pushing nearly -11 on the LUFS level. So if we take it out, you can see the loudness is greatly affected. Especially on those piano transients. So again, this really adds a nice polish to the overall sound of the mix. And if we go here, where it gets more sweeping from here on out, and we take it out, you just don't have the level of presence that you do if you keep it in. So there's different ways that you can shape this. We can control the limiter, we can control the filtering, and we can control the input signal. So let's mess around with the input signal and the balance of the mix, which is nice. Again, lots of things that you can do. I would say that it's not the most intuitive piece of equipment, well, obviously plugin that you can use, but it really, really can add some nice affectations to your mix. And the way that you can start is just by using the presets. So we'll go through a few of the presets through this particular section. Again, it's one of those things that you learn how to use and that you experiment with. And this is one of my favorite presets to mess around with, particularly as just this kind of music, this ambient sort of score that I'm working on. So this is how we use, or a way to use the Abbey Road TG Mastering Live. And it's such a great thing to add at the end of things. Now you can use it in your session on the stereo out bus, of course, but you can always, bounce your track out and then create a new session where you do a little bit of mastering. Now, one thing that it doesn't have is it doesn't have an actual out ceiling limiter. So there are transients that can actually poke through on this because it is trying to emulate an analog piece of equipment that doesn't quite have that ceiling shelf. So as in most analog equipment, you'll have sort of frequency spikes and amplitude spikes go through the top, which can actually mess up the LUFS level. So you might want to combine this with a maximizer or a limiter that has an absolute out ceiling. And a lot of folks do use it that way. I'll show you an example of that. So we have this section here. And this is a really great plugin. This is the Slate FX FGX2, which will really create a situation where you can balance the mix by making sure that it doesn't go through past a certain threshold, 0 dB threshold, by setting up the out ceiling as -1. So this kind of acts like the sort of the fail-safe against the Abbey Road plugin, allowing for some of those big transient spikes if you have a mix that's like that. So this is just one of the ways that you can use it. So when we hear it all together and we take them away, it's pretty dramatic. So let's listen to the whole signal chain, and I'll bypass them one at a time. Bring it back in. So that's clearly a really big difference when you're using these. So if you like this video, or if you have any particular comments or questions, please leave them in the comments section. Have a great day.